So some really fascinating data coming out from NATO pertaining to defense expenditure as a share of GDP. Now, we all know that Vladimir Putin wanted to fracture NATO. He wanted to show the world that there was cracks in the alliance and that countries would disagree on what to do about his invasion in Ukraine. He bet on it in 2014 and somewhat won there, and then Reid bet again, doubled down, so to speak, in 2022, and the outcome is very much different this time. So as you can see, there are now 23 countries that meet that NATO guideline of 2%. Now, it's worth noting that this guideline is not a rule. It's not, as Donald Trump would say, if you're not paying your 2%, you're not a part of NATO, or you're not getting the protection of NATO. This isn't a mafia protection racket where you have to pay. Countries that don't meet that 2% are still in the alliance. They still have value. They're just encouraged to meet that 2% guideline. Well, as of 2024 estimates, there are 23 countries now meeting or exceeding that 2% guideline, when in 2014 that number was 3. Some notable things to see here. First, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Finland, or excuse me, not Finland, Sweden, right here. Finland is not represented here because they just recently joined. These countries, the Baltic nations, Poland and Sweden, all border Russia. You can see all of them have over doubled their defense spending. Huge increases, especially Poland and especially Latvia. Enormous. This is a threefold jump for Latvia, and it is because they are countries that border Russia. They have the biggest concerns about Russia's potential future aggression outside of Ukraine, and Putin has stated the Baltic nations are in his crosshairs. Another thing to kind of note here is the United States and Croatia are the only two countries to drop. Now, Croatia's drop is actually negligible. In fact, they're most likely roughly the same within the margin of error of calculations here. But the U.S. did actually drop in defense expenditures, and this is because of Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan between 2014 and 2024 ended, and so the spending on defense for that area and that war ceased. It was eliminated, and so the U.S. dropped in its defense expenditure, but still easily meets the 3.38 or the 2% mark at 3.38%. So broadly, we can extrapolate that the NATO alliance certainly did not fracture. In fact, they galvanized, and now they are preparing for potential future additional aggression from Russia. Whether that comes or not, this was yet another strategic blunder by Vladimir Putin. He really thought that he could play with the puppet strings of NATO and get them to fracture, get them to bend to his will, as if it was somewhat 2014 again. Well, it's not, and the situation is NATO is ready to fight Russia if necessary.